Hi there, and welcome to Green Shoe Conversations. I'm Stephanie Cochran, the Executive Director for the Green Shoe Foundation, and this is episode 33. Thanks for joining me. Today with me, I have Stephen Brinkworth, one of our therapists here. Hey, Steve.
Hey, good to see you.
I know, good to see you. Happy New Year, right? It's
Happy New Year to you too.
January 15th. I could still say that. So
Yes, yes.
I could say it all year, I guess, if I really wanted to.
You could.
But this is actually our first live back, at it. I really do appreciate everyone. The last couple weeks, we kind of went back and replayed two of our really good ones. And it kind of in preparation for New Year's theme, looking at self-esteem and reality, which I think is always important. It's so funny how this time of year, it's all about New Year's resolutions, looking back at 2020, which again, I think will go down in the history books as one of the eventful years that we've had in modern day. And we were kind of sitting around the other day, just kind of talking about this. And, there's all different kinds of ways to look at 2020. I've never been a huge fan of New Year's resolutions, which is funny because I love setting goals, but I do that throughout the whole year. And last January, something that I had us do is word of the year. That's something I've been doing for several years. And to me, that is more about a theme or something I'm wanting to focus on throughout my life. So it's not a pass or fail, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Kind of thing. So do you remember your word of the year that you picked?
I remember one of them. We picked two.
Right.
The one that I'm remembering right now was for our work word of the year, and it was family. And as we got into 2020, we got to work for a little bit, and then we had to stop for quite a bit. And even with us stopping, we didn't lose contact with each other.
Yeah.
And we maintained contact via Zoom. We did a ton of trainings, and it's really amazing the kind of connection that we were able to foster as a team and as a family, a work family together over the last year, without having those normal day-to-day routines that we would have had.
Right. But I remember that was something I was so worried about when we, had to quarantine. And something I felt that immediate loss of, where's my work family? Missing being in the office together and working, but quickly found, especially through Zoom, that we all did such a good job of doing Zoom and talking and texting and making sure we stay connected. And those trainings that we did, we could have all watched those individually, and just done them on our own. But they were so much more impactful when we could watch them together and stop and ask questions and talk. And like you said, still stay connected.
Yes.
So yeah.
That's absolutely huge. Those trainings, you and I have talked about this. We've talked about this as a team. It's unbelievable how much information as a team we were able to not just observe and take in, but to process together. Just like you were talking about, have those times to hit pause and ask questions of each other. And what'd you take away? What'd you take away? And it was amazing the kind of exposure to therapeutic techniques and physiological awarenesses that relate to the work that we do at Green Shoe, and the language and some things to think about with questions and meditations, and just a ton of really, really rich information that we all got to share and take part in together, which is incredible, especially while we've been quarantined.
And then I watched you guys, we were able to start groups back in July, take all of that and then actually put it to practice. And watching you guys go, wow, look at this, how enriching it was, and being able, to use, because again, it's one thing to go through training, it's another to be able to actually get to use it. And so I was grateful that we were able to do that and not having just all this training and nowhere to go with it.
Yeah. And it's amazing how so much of it, I mean, as a therapist, there's a lot of trainings that we go to, typically. I remember several in the past that I've had a certain number of CEU hours.
Mhm.
And with what I'd gotten over the year, X amount of it was applicable to my current work environment.
Mhm.
Thinking about how much of what we took in with trainings this last year is applicable at Green Shoe,
Mhm.
unbelievable amount.
Right.
Unbelievable. And I'd say easily 80, 90% of what were in those presentations, maybe even higher, but
Mhm.
a very high amount of really great clinical wisdom that we got to observe and learn how to put to use.
Well, and then something I think, to kind of give us props as a team is then we actually put it to some personal use as well.
Yes.
I know for me personally, being able to grow and get more into my connecting to self. And I think we talked about this in one of the podcasts, how to connect into our body and through meditation or yoga or doing some physical things. I mean, I actually did that. And now that's a practice of mine that I've carried through,
Mhm.
2020. And it helped me get through, the rough parts of that
Yeah.
quarantine. It wasn't all roses and unicorns, let's be clear.
No,
Like that.
no, not at all.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, there were times of feeling isolated, but I knew what to go
Yeah.
do once I started and being able, it's like I had that really quick awareness system
Hmm.
because of some of that training of, oh, wait, this is what you're feeling. So here, go do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing to have it not just be applicable in a clinical setting, but personally too.
Yeah. It's really funny. Okay. So I picked my personal word of the year. I picked savor. And I did
Mm,
that. I remember this was January of 2019. This was
yeah.
before we even knew. I picked it because I wanted to, especially where I am in my life, where I am in my marriage, my kids are getting older. I've got one about to graduate college, one that's going to graduate high school next year. That and life is not slow. So I can't say I wanted to slow
Yeah.
down because that's not realistic. But I
Yeah.
wanted to make
Yeah.
sure I stopped and took in the moments and savored just those 5 minutes of things happening. 5 minutes, my teenager wasn't complaining about something or whatever. And who knew that I was going to get time with all four of them or all four of us, I
Yeah.
should say, at home. And
Yeah.
because I picked that word, instead of getting frustrated when the laundry or the dishes piled up, it was like, okay, wait, just stop. I was actually given a gift that I got to spend all this time in good time with my family. And so
Absolutely.
I think that mindset helped get through some of this.
Hmm.
And the oldest actually will head back now on Sunday for his last semester of college. And we've had 2 months home from Christmas because they did the different schedule because of COVID.
Hmm.
And yes, there's a part of me that I'm like, I'm ready for him to go, know, but I love the time that we've had, the conversations, the spontaneous, goofy moments, and that
Yeah.
we had those. And,
Yeah.
there was some, I mean, again, he's trying to figure out life as an
Hmm.
adult. And there was a lot of
Hmm.
those really good conversations. And then he gets to now go back. So
Yeah.
yeah, that word
Yeah.
savor definitely, yeah, played throughout this year.
I think it's interesting thinking about your word and thinking about what I chose as well. That,
Mhm.
on January 2020, pick this word. And by the end of 2020, it has a whole different
That's a whole new meaning.
tone and yet has so much richness to it.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I chose to find the richness in that. And
Mhm.
again, I think that some of that from the support of family and especially you guys, I was able to do that. I haven't picked my word yet for this year in complete transparency. I think I said, 2 weeks ago, hey, we need to do that again.
Uh-huh.
I'm still working on it. I know you had something cool that we're not going to talk about. We'll reveal that in another one. But
You got it.
yeah, it, maybe there's some of it of I better be careful which word I pick.
I can relate. I can relate. Yeah. Yeah.
So, in looking back to at 2020, what
Mhm.
is some of the lessons you think you've learned? Because that's kind of how we've chosen to look at this is yes, we're having reflections, but what did I learn this past year?
There are so many different directions that my mind wants to answer that question. But just like you mentioned, some of those times were so rich with good things, and sometimes there were some really, really difficult things
Mhm.
to go through.
Yeah.
Um, I'm thinking back now as you asked that question about spontaneity and authenticity. And one of the things that comes to mind was my stepson's birthday. And this was
Mhm.
not after we went into quarantine.
Mhm.
And for someone who's a preteen, to not have that tradition of being able to invite your friends over and we'll have a big party and food and games and X, Y, and Z, what do we do? And
Right.
so spontaneously, what we decided to do as a family was we'd have a water fight in the backyard, just the three of us. And so we had all sorts of different things that you'd use with water balloons, water guns, the hose, buckets.
And he didn't know, right? This was a surprise for him.
Yeah, and we just played, and that spontaneity
Mhm.
was there was so much joy in the backyard. And my wife and I kind of giggled at it that, the neighbors may be wondering what's going on.
I may want to come join.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. So that was something that I think was a big takeaway, that we're going to have milestones and things that we do even in times that are difficult to go through traditional types of honoring that birthday or holiday.
Yeah.
So being spontaneous about how we intentionally spend time together. Uh,
Right.
that's a big piece, because I think that's something we'll take forward no matter what the year looks like.
Yeah, I think so. And I think because we've been in this now, I mean, what, 10 months, most people have experienced that quarantine birthday. Birthdays were
Yeah,
hard.
yeah,
Anniversaries. I mean, I had a big anniversary this year and,
same.
have had to now cancel a trip and some different things. But I'm like, but you know what? If I get to take that trip next year, that's still okay. That trip still gets to happen.
Yeah,
Um, and just trying to, keep some of that in perspective, because I think the main thing is, my family's been safe throughout this. Now I know a lot of families have had to deal with grief and loss. Um,
yeah,
and, we talked a lot about that in December. And so, I am grateful, for that. And I'm okay giving up some of the big celebrations, just some that way I know that, we were safe. You talked about there were some difficult things, and we don't want to shy away from any of those topics, just
mm-mm,
trying to stay whatever. I think one of the biggest lessons for me came out of some of the racial conflicts that happened throughout
yeah,
the year. And it was kind of at a time too where we were really looking and doing some training and talking about kind of how were we raised,
mhm,
and what belief systems and different things. And I remember telling you guys, well, my parents always raised me to be colorblind. Everybody's equal, everybody's loved. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned coming out of this year is that wasn't okay, because my silence wasn't
mhm,
okay.
yeah.
And
Lesson.
right. And again, me wanting to now honor people for their differences. Yes, I've always been accepting and I've always loved people, but I need to actually, through my actions, show
Mhm,
that I honor you for gender, race, ethnicity, beliefs. I said this earlier. I may not agree with you, and that's okay, but I still need to honor you.
yeah, yeah. I'm thinking too about some of the trainings we did
Mhm.
last year, and all the different parts work language. As I was listening to you say a part of me, and I'm thinking about how much that's become really kind of a familiar language for all of us at Green Shoe, to talk
Yeah.
about the different parts that show up. And that's been really helpful during some of this divide as well, where
Mhm.
tension, there's been conflict. And I can see that be a part of someone who disagrees with how I see things, or
Yeah.
a part of me that disagrees with them. And that's helped bring some of that tension down,
Mhm.
bit to be able to have those conversations and really engage in a way that is authentic, that's
Yeah.
honest. I had a lot of exposure to difference of culture and beliefs growing up. And um, when I went to college, I went out of state and went to a small liberal arts Quaker college called Guilford in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I thought I understood difference. And as I got into Guilford, it really pulled the curtain back and helped me see things in a much more honest and realistic way. And even more so in some of these trainings, one of the people that was in one of the trainings of 2020 that we did was Resma Menachem.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about really looking at the body responses that we have, and that there's a lot of work that we need to do within our own cultures and understanding our own cultures to be able to have this dialogue. Because if I don't know where I'm coming from, it's really hard to have that dialogue with somebody else.
Right.
And so he was saying, this blew my mind. He was saying that, so on an epigenetic level, internally, all of us carry markers from the last 14 generations.
Wow.
And how many of those stories do we actually know?
Mm-hmm.
I know a few generations, but definitely not 14.
No, I probably could go back maybe 4 or 5 just because we've got some of the records that, people in my family have done, but that's it.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
those conversations are really important for us to have. I'm in a multicultural family. My
Mm-hmm.
family's biracial, and so there's a family conversation that we have. There's a social conversation that we have, kind of understanding where we're at and how different things may impact us, but also from growing up the way we grew up, what lens am I seeing this world through?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that was going on in this past year that was really scary for me and for my family. And I really worried about the safety of my family members
Yeah,
in the
you and I
community.
talked about that throughout the year, different conversations.
Yeah.
Which really made me think of, oh my gosh, I would have never thought about that, for you and you and your family. And really prompted some of those thinkings for me of, what, I can't be silent.
Mm-hmm.
Just because my white privileged family we're okay and safe doesn't mean there are other people I care about that don't have these thoughts and feelings. And again, for you and I to have the conversation and, allow you to process that and talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those are, we talked about this previously, but, we've kind of talked around this subject right now, but this is a conversation, one of many that began in 2020, but this is a conversation that has begun and absolutely needs to continue. It's not a one-time conversation, but a way for us to really and truly get to know ourselves and get to know the people that we live with, not just in our home, but in our community, on my street, in my neighborhood,
right.
The people I see at work, really getting to know everybody.
And not be afraid to have that conversation. I do think so much of I'm just going to be accepting but not say anything is because I'm scared of conflict. Conversations don't have to be conflictual. Yet we can still disagree. There's things you and I probably disagree on. It's okay. And
there's a big piece of having those conversations that I've learned doesn't require me saying a thing. I need to listen.
Yeah.
I need to hear from somebody else, and I don't need them to feel forced to tell me or to be a representative of anybody else, but it's my responsibility to really deeply listen to the people who are sharing with me. And as we talk at Green Shoe about using the talking listening boundary, I'm listening out of curiosity. I'm listening to get to know the other person, not listening to wait to respond or anything else. I'm listening out of curiosity.
Yeah. And you and I got to be a part of some community conversations that were so powerful.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and again, I'm giving a lot of credit to our founder who owns, you think about how many people and employees that are underneath him. And he came out and said, look, we're going to stop our workday, which is sales, and we're
Yeah.
going to have these conversations, in these small groups where people can tell their stories.
And
And
not just in Oklahoma.
no, no, we were in conversations where there were people from New York,
Mhm.
Chicago, Dallas. I loved it,
Georgia, yeah.
Georgia, and just being able to share their story. And one in particular was like, it felt so good just to be heard,
Yeah.
just to be heard,
Yeah.
and to hear other people with similar stories or even the opposite, and just that back and forth. So you're right, those conversations have to continue,
Yeah.
and be important to
So
just do that.
crucial.
Yeah,
So crucial.
absolutely. Okay, one fun question before we close. What's something new that you did this past year, that you picked up?
We've talked about where there's some new things that I've gotten into that are kind of like another layer. So I like to cook. One of the things that I've done over the past year is kind of exploring what it looks like to cook with a sous vide,
Can
which
I explain what that is?
is totally different than any kind of cooking I've ever done before. And it's
I've watched Iron Chef, so I know, but
so it's what some people will refer to as when you cook in bath water. It's
okay.
you have a tub of water and there's a device that sits mostly submerged, probably about 2/3 of the way submerged. And it's a heater that cycles the water in that container. Now, you've got whatever your protein source is or your sides, and vacuum sealed
Mm-hmm.
in packaging that you can submerge in that water. So the tool that's in the water to heat it, you can raise to a certain temperature and hold it as long as you want to. So I could go buy a really cheap cut of steak and put it in there and cook it and have it where it tenderizes itself for cooking so long, breaks down all that connective tissue. And then all I have to do is sear it to get the outside to look like I've spent an incredible amount of time preparing it.
How fun.
Really, it was just taking a long, long, slow cook.
Yeah. A
So,
different way of slow cooking.
yeah, that was something that's been really fun. I think the one of the other things that comes to mind are some of the musicians that I've gotten exposed to through being at home and having more um, I don't want to say just social media, but a lot of social media introduction to some of these people. Some really amazing musicians just
Mhm.
around the country. I'm thinking of the Tiny Desk concerts that
Uh-huh.
NPR, and they did all those at home this year.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of people that I never would have heard. And we got time to just sit together and listen to some new music, new musicians. And that really opened my eyes. On a work level, those trainings were out of sight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's, I will continue to revisit that material over and over.
Mhm.
Just like we talked about having those difficult conversations,
Yeah.
there's so much information we need to process.
Yeah.
Those trainings had such deep and rich information that, okay, I understand it from this perspective. Now, after we've put this to use for 6 months, let's revisit it. And how do I see this now? And I can already see different layers of growth
Mhm.
within taking in things from internal family systems, polyvagal theory,
Mhm.
some of the racialized trauma that we've talked about,
Right.
all
Body
sorts
keeps the
of different
score.
things.
That was a huge
Yes,
one.
yes.
And yes, there's the book, and it's great. I think we even had that as book of the month one time this year.
Mhm.
But to actually hear Bessel talk and
Mhm.
go through that, And let's be clear, he's ADHD is all get out because he just goes off on tangents. But I love his tangents, and just the information we got from his brain was fantastic.
Yeah. What about you?
So when you talked about music and the arts, that really kind of sparked me. That's the arts is a big part. I mean, it's part of my family's livelihood too, and was one of the areas this year that's gotten hit I think the most. We still don't have theater, we still don't have Broadway, and the concerts and things that we thought we were going to lose. And to see the way these artists got creative through YouTube and social media to put on concerts. Seth Rudetsky, big old Broadway guy, was doing twice a day at like 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. just a live Facebook. And he would bring in different Broadway artists and have conversations, and you could chat with them. I mean, these are people that I thought I would never meet, that you could actually listen to and chat. And then he did, Kristen Chenoweth, who huge Oklahoma OCU, love her. She was doing Saturday night in her bathroom between singing and joking and talking. And that just made, for me, it was so fun. And it was something different than just plopping in front of the TV. We could go out in the back patio and put on a live concert. Yeah. And when can you say we've done that before? So for me, that was great. I'd like to tell you that I was picked up a whole new talent and all that, but no, I didn't.
Yeah.
I did
revisit a couple.
I mean, I did.
I got my potter's wheel out in the backyard and got to play around and throw some pots. And
I think I nagged you about that pretty much all year, though. Have you thrown anything yet? Did you get your clay?
And that was something that looked different too this past year. I got to place an order and then drive to the business and pick it up off the back steps by myself. So things look totally different, but yeah, it was fun to revisit some of those pieces. And
it was
watched, I guess I've also kind of learned watching through some of the endeavors that my wife has engaged in this past year in resin art, all inks, and some of the things that she's really gotten into that are just fascinating.
Yeah. And that's so fun. My husband, years ago, I mean, and again, when we first met in high school, played guitar and bass. And so he got his bass out again and started picking that back up again. And so that was kind of fun hearing him, do that. So
you talked about those live concerts.
Yeah.
There was a guy that I got introduced to, maybe 2019 was the first time I heard him, definitely by 2020. And as we went into quarantine, he started broadcasting a live show daily. He's now at almost 300 days of live every day.
Hey, yeah.
Streaming a live show.
And that's crazy, and the dedication it takes.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know that they're making any money. I don't know. A lot of these concerts and stuff did sponsor, funding for the arts and different things to try to make sure we're keeping some of these people. And instead of funding for the arts, they even funded for restaurant businesses and, and healthcare workers and different things. So to me, that's, what was fantastic. I have read that it is going to be the arts that brings us back, that when we get things and the music and the theater and all that back, that's going to bring us back. So I'm excited about that day.
One touching plug, if you haven't watched it yet on Disney Plus, Soul is absolutely worth in front of.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so good.
We've already said that's tomorrow night's movie night. So because with Christmas and vacations and all this, we all wanted to actually watch it together. So
I want to hear what you think about it, because we really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I heard the music's fantastic, so I'm excited.
That's another piece I want to check with you too, because the music was fantastic, and it was done by somebody who was my adolescent part, who listened to much, much heavier music. That artist from a very different style.
Okay.
So I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah. I'm excited. Okay, well, we'll touch back on that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Let everybody know. Hey, Steve, thanks for joining me again.
absolutely. It's good
Great
talking with you.
conversation. Yeah. And we're
Yes.
going to continue these, what we've learned, because I'm
Yeah.
hoping, and let us know too, questions you have, or I would love to know what you guys have learned throughout the year and different things that we can kind of touch on. Next week, I'm going to have Teresa Deck, our clinical director, going to join me and kind of get her perspectives. And then we'll also hear from, Rebecca Holt. And so, and all of us as we kind of go through this. So again, if you need to reach us, greenshoe.org, or email me at info@greenshoe.org. Would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us.